Imagine releasing an album so, just monumentally successful that decades later it still sits entirely unrivaled as the best-selling album in human history.
Right, which is just wild to even think about today.
It really is.
Yeah.
And imagine making music videos so incredibly powerful that entire television networks have to physically alter their daily broadcast architecture
Yeah.
just to accommodate the sheer demand from viewers.
Yeah, they literally had to rewire how they did TV.
Exactly. And imagine engineering a public persona so distinct that your mere silhouette, just a black outline against a white background, bypasses every language barrier on Earth.
Oh, yeah. Instantly recognized in nearly every country.
Right. So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are reverse engineering the modern pop star.
And when you lay the facts out like that, it sounds less like a biography and more like a work of speculative fiction.
It really does.
Yeah.
But when you look at your favorite artist today, whether that's an American megastar dominating stadium tours with, theatrical precision, or a K-pop idol executing these flawless multimedia campaigns, you are watching a system operate.
A very specific, highly tuned system.
Yeah, they're singing, dancing, acting, and branding all at once. And that multidisciplinary system was largely assembled by one person, Michael Jackson.
We aren't just looking at the trajectory of a successful musician here. We are really looking at the invention of an entirely new industrial model for global superstardom.
Exactly. So to understand the invisible architecture of how entertainment actually works today, we have to examine the blueprint he drafted. Okay, let's unpack this, because to grasp how radical that blueprint was, we need to look at the rigid world he dismantled, right?
Yeah, we have to start with the baseline rules of the music industry in the 1960s and 1970s, because they were fundamentally different.
It was really the era of the specialist, wasn't it?
Completely. Entertainers operated in these distinct, highly segregated lanes. Singers stood behind microphones and sang. Rock bands stood in a line and played their instruments.
Right, and actors just work on sound stages, dancers performed in troops.
Exactly. The archetype of the modern pop superstar, that centralized figure who controls and executes every single one of those disciplines at an elite level simultaneously, it simply did not exist yet.
And the functional economics of the time kind of demanded that separation. For the vast majority of the 20th century, music was strictly an audio experience.
Radio dictated the entire industry. You discovered songs by spinning the dial or maybe dropping a coin in a jukebox.
The voice was the sole product. You could be a devoted, lifelong fan of a massive artist and realistically never see their face in motion.
Oh, visual presentation was almost an afterthought back then. Album covers and stage outfits required some thought, sure, but television was viewed as a secondary thing.
Just an occasional promotional tool.
Right. An artist might do a late-night talk show or a holiday variety special, but there was no continuous visual marketing machine like we have now. Fame operated at a glacial pace.
So it's like going to a restaurant in the 70s where the chef only cooks and the server only serves.
That is a great way to put it, yeah.
But today, we expect our pop stars to be the chef, the server, the interior decorator, and, the marketing director all at once.
We demand absolute mastery of every domain now.
So the question becomes, how does the industry physically transition from that slow, audio-first model to an environment where the artist runs everything?
Well, the mechanism driving that transition was an unprecedented decade-long education in the literal mechanics of entertainment. And this was all absorbed before the artist even reached adulthood.
Wow, so literally growing up on stage.
Exactly. Michael Jackson was born in Gary, Indiana, into a large working-class family. And while his peers were sitting in elementary school classrooms learning multiplication tables, he was navigating this grueling circuit of small clubs and theaters.
Learning the physical science of commanding a live audience.
Right. The explosion of the Jackson 5 meant he grew up entirely in the public eye. But the real value of that childhood was the acquisition of thousands of hours of sheer, unfiltered repetition.
And that repetition was highly structured, too. The Jackson 5 signed with Motown Records. And Motown didn't just record songs, right? That they operated an elite academy for entertainers.
They really did. It wasn't just a matter of handing a talented kid a microphone. Motown drilled their artists.
Yeah, in media training, public image curation, synchronized choreography, stage etiquette. They basically taught the actual business infrastructure of being a star.
Because Motown recognized that raw talent is only the entry fee.
Yeah.
Sustained success requires presentation and absolute consistency.
Right.
And because Jackson was performing night after night, analyzing these crowds in real time, He internalized the psychology of performance.
Wait, so people usually think of pop music as this spontaneous burst of creativity,
Yeah.
but you're saying he treated it more like a rigid science experiment?
Huh. What's fascinating here is that successful performers rarely view their work as magic. It is a highly calculated craft. He proved that entertainment is a calculated science.
Wow.
Yeah, Jackson developed what you could call an obsessive acoustic spatial awareness. He wasn't just singing a song, he was engineering a 360-degree sensory experience.
I read he would study the exact millisecond a pause should hold before a chorus drops.
Yes, just to maximize the dopamine release in the listener. He calculated the precise timing of lighting cues to manipulate the crowd's emotional state. He really understood the profound impact of absolute silence on a massive stage.
That is wild, and that level of microscopic detail extended directly into his studio work, too. The sources highlight that his perfectionism was so extreme, he would literally beatbox complex, multi-layered drum rhythms and bass lines to his session musicians.
Right, he possessed this ability to hear the fully completed multi-track production in his head before a single instrument was ever plugged into an amplifier.
Which is just, that hyper-competence is what allowed him to successfully navigate that super dangerous transition in the music industry. Evolving from a novelty child star into an autonomous adult visionary.
It is notoriously the hardest thing to do in entertainment. But by the late 1970s, he had actively evolved into his own primary songwriter. He had completely refined his rhythmic vocal style, and he demanded total control over his creative output.
So he possessed an arsenal of skills that no single competitor had. He was an elite vocalist, a veteran live performer, an innovative dancer, a visual thinker, and a proven hitmaker.
Yeah, but here is the catch. Having a fully loaded, state-of-the-art engine doesn't matter if you don't have the right fuel.
Right, the industry itself was still stuck in the past.
Exactly. He had assembled this all-encompassing skill set, but the audio-first industry of the 1970s couldn't fully process it. He needed a structural catalyst to fundamentally change the rules of the game.
And that catalyst arrived in the early 80s, right?
Yeah.
The 1981 launch of MTV.
Yes. The introduction of a 24-hour cable channel dedicated exclusively to music videos physically flipped the board. The competitive landscape shifted overnight from a purely auditory battleground to a highly visual one.
It was no longer sufficient to just press a good-sounding vinyl record. You had to look distinctive.
You had to move in a way that captivated a television audience. You had to deliver a continuous visual spectacle.
And the industry found itself entirely unprepared for this shift, except for the one artist who had inadvertently spent his entire life training for a visual, global era that hadn't existed until that very moment.
Jackson had the visual vocabulary, the choreography, and the musicality. And in 1982, he and producer Quincy Jones deployed all of those weapons simultaneously with the release of the album Thriller.
To really understand the impact of Thriller, you have to look at their initial production goal, which was just staggering in its ambition.
Yeah, following his 1979 success with Off the Wall, Jackson and Jones had a radical goal. They decided to engineer an album with absolutely no weak links.
Every single track was designed to be a standalone hit.
Yeah.
Which was a massive deviation from the economic model of the time, right?
Totally. The industry standard was to front-load a record with one or two great radio singles and then just pad the remaining 30 minutes of the vinyl with B-level filler.
It's like going to a grocery store and buying a whole bag of trail mix just for the M&Ms. You had to buy the whole album for 2 songs.
Right, you had to buy the raisins and the peanuts even if you didn't want them.
Exactly. But Jackson decided to make the whole bag out of M&S. He essentially invented the blockbuster album era.
And to achieve that monopoly, they had to break down the physical distribution silos of the 1980s. Because radio at the time was rigidly, almost militantly segregated.
Right, rock stations played white rock artists, and R&B stations played black artists. Pop was its own narrow lane.
Thriller was designed as an aggressive, genre-busting Trojan horse. By seamlessly fusing pop, rock, R&B, funk, soul, and dance music, they forced the industry's hand.
When they put legendary rock guitarist Eddie Van Halen on the track Beat It, white rock stations had no choice but to put a black pop artist in heavy rotation.
Exactly. The album systematically appealed to every demographic across every format simultaneously.
And that cross-demographic appeal fueled a brand new economic mechanism, the mega single strategy.
Right. Before this, an artist dropped an album, pushed a single, and just hoped the momentum lasted a few months.
But Jackson dropped a relentless, perfectly spaced stream of chart-topping hits to keep the album culturally relevant for years.
Every time album sales began to naturally dip, boom, a new mega hit hits the radio, spiking the album sales back to the top at full retail price.
So dominating the audio waves globally was massive, but that was only half the equation. He still had to figure out how to make people physically watch music differently.
And prior to the early 80s, the music video was just this highly localized, relatively cheap promotional tool.
Like just grainy concert footage, right?
Yeah, purely functional. A label would shoot a basic video of the band performing on a soundstage and send it out to European TV stations so the band didn't have to travel there.
The song was the undisputed product. The video was just a low-budget commercial trying to convince you to go buy the audio.
But Jackson recognized that MTV provided the bandwidth to make the visual the primary product. He completely abandoned the concept of the promotional clip and began treating his videos as cinematic short films.
And the ultimate execution of this strategy was the Thriller music video. I mean, released in 1983, it clocked in at almost 14 minutes long.
Featuring horror storytelling, special makeup effects, a major feature film director.
And that legendary sequence of synchronized group choreography, people didn't just passively watch it, they imitated it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the exact moment music videos stopped being advertisements and became the actual entertainment. It was appointment television.
He birthed the event release. He treated a song drop like a movie premiere, complete with trailers and global anticipation.
The line separating music, dance, and cinema was completely eradicated. He proved that the visual component wasn't an accessory to the music, it was half the intrinsic value of the art.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because to fully capitalize on that, the artists themselves had to become a globally recognizable entity. The final piece of the modern pop blueprint is the artist becoming a brand.
The transformation of the human performer into a localized multimedia corporate brand. The precision of his visual branding was staggering.
He made himself as instantly recognizable as the Nike swoosh or the Apple logo. You see a silhouette with a fedora and a glove, and you instantly know the brand.
It functioned exactly like a high-level corporate logo. By utilizing that highly specific, unchanging visual vocabulary, the single sequin glove, the fedora, the military-style jackets.
A white socks with black loafers.
Yes, he completely bypassed language barriers. You didn't need to speak a word of English to understand the product. It was high-contrast visibility designed for a global scale.
And deeply embedded within that brand identity was the choreography. It wasn't just a side piece, it was core to the artist's identity.
Prior to Jackson, dance and pop music was largely treated as interstitial entertainment, something visually interesting happening while the singer took a breath.
Right. But Jackson elevated choreography to the point where the movement was indistinguishable from the music. The moonwalk wasn't simply a dance step, it was a proprietary visual signature.
Fans weren't just buying records to listen, they were buying them to physically emulate the artist.
And that integrated approach naturally demanded a massive centralized business model. I mean, generating revenue through touring, merch, licensing, sponsorships.
He built an ecosystem. Massive stadium tours, global merchandising empires, lucrative sponsorships with major beverage companies. He became a self-contained, multinational corporation.
And his blueprint is visible everywhere today. In American pop, Latin music, K-pop.
The market now demands that an artist be an elite musician, a captivating dancer, a fashion trendsetter, and a ruthless CEO, all wrapped into a single human package.
Now, obviously, we do need to address the complicated reality of all this. The deep dive must neutrally look at the whole picture. And it is impossible to examine his structural footprint without acknowledging how deeply divided his personal legacy is today.
Yeah, absolutely. For many fans, cultural critics, and observers, the art he created cannot be separated from the serious, highly publicized allegations surrounding his private life.
And the sources note that this has permanently fractured how large segments of the public view his catalog. It's a deeply complex issue. Some separate the art from the artist, while others absolutely cannot.
Right. But regardless of where one stands on that personal legacy from a purely historical and structural standpoint, industry experts and historians agree his influence on celebrity culture and music was profound.
The physical mechanics he introduced remain the foundational bedrock of modern pop.
The architecture he built simply became the industry standard. Global synchronized releases, cinematic storytelling, ironclad personal branding. He laid the concrete foundation that the current system sits upon.
So to bring it all together for you listening, next time you see your favorite pop star, whether it's a K-pop idol with perfect choreo or a megastar dropping a cinematic visual album, you now know they are operating using the playbook Michael Jackson authored.
It is a profound legacy of structural transformation. But, analyzing all the material we've covered today raises a really vital question about the future of this blueprint.
Oh, how so?
Well, the sources show how Jackson perfected the human element of the pop star, the physical dancing, the live presence, the personal branding. Everything relied on human physical perfection.
Right, the sheer athleticism of it all.
Exactly. But as we enter an era of artificial intelligence, holographic stadium concerts, and virtual idols that never age, never miss a step, and never need sleep, will the Jackson blueprint finally become obsolete?
Wow, that is a wild thought.
Yeah, or is the physical, deeply flawed human perfection he modeled the one thing technology can never truly replace?
Is the human element, the sweat, the gravity, the physical presence, something code can never actually replicate? We will leave that for you to decide. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we will catch you next time. As always, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and comment below.
Yeah, leave us your thoughts.
Let us know what you think.
And don't forget to check out the links in the description. You might find some useful stuff there. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.